morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. My name is Wayson Venata, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. When you look at today's technical landscape, there are many exciting advances in our world, and to name a few, the cloud, AI are things that are ever changing. But for us, the ever-present cybersecurity threat continues to make advances, and it's very difficult to stay ahead. Now, one way to stay ahead is to partner with a trusted cybersecurity vendor, which leads us into our topic today of our webinar, critical factors to look for in a cybersecurity vendor. Let me first start with some introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Wayson Venata. I am the CIO at WatchGuard Technologies. I've been here for 7 years, and I've been in the industry for about 25, starting with as a system administrator in the United States Air Force 25 years ago. Can't believe how long it's been. Let's start with our panelists and introduction. First off, Calvin Ingen from F12. Calvin, can you introduce yourself?
Well, thank you, Wayson. So my name is Calvin Ingen. I'm the CTO for F12. And what I do is I oversee internal security, compliance, application development, our cloud, private cloud data centers. And what me and my team do is really keep our clients' data safe and secure along with F12. We do a lot of the R&D and product selections for our clients around cybersecurity, looking at new things that we can bring to market to help serve our clients. We serve about 700 unique clients, around 20,000 end users. My role really started 16 years ago as an entry-level technician and grew through the ranks over time. But one, I love this topic. I love cybersecurity in general, and so I'm really looking forward to be partnering with the panelists today to discuss this. So I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Calvin. Appreciate that. Maria Murata with MicroCAD. Maria, please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, I'm Maria Merida. I'm the sales director in MicroCAD Informatica. It's a company founded in 1886, and we offer services and solutions in cybersecurity, infrastructure, networking, disaster recovery, contingency plans, and private cloud to different profile of clients, small, medium-sized companies, and also large companies with the interlocutor is the CTO. And our aim as a technology company is to offer simple, secure, and scalable technology that facilitates the day-to-day life of our clients.
Nice, thank you. Jody Goff with Sage Network Systems. Jody, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jody with Sage Network Systems. I am the owner of Sage. I purchased Sage about 14 years ago, along with my husband who does the technical end. We are primarily a cybersecurity company. We also do a lot of network infrastructure and network design, that kind of thing. So our goal really is, you know, like everyone else, is to secure our company's data, our customers' company data. We partner with several different vendors. So this topic is very relevant. It was a good question that I saw come across my desk, so I was happy to see that. My role with the company, you know, is a lot of the business operations end, but certainly includes partnering with other vendors and doing the research to see what's going to work for our company and what will work for our customers.
Awesome, thanks, Jody. And bringing us home, Paul Harris with New Access SA.
Thank you, Wayson. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Harris. I'm Executive President in New Access. We're based out of Ecuador, and New Access was recently acquired by eJuno, so our footprint is not only Ecuador anymore, it expands all through Latin America. Very excited to be here. We are very focused on business continuity services and very focused on the use of the cloud as part of that strategy for business continuity. So cybersecurity is a key piece, key part of the puzzle. And like I said, we're structuring plans for disaster recovery for customers, backup, and using the cloud mainly as part of that strategy. We're a 20-year-old company, and now looking forward to expand our services in LATAM through the eJuno network.
Great, thanks, Paul. It is just awesome to see 4 panelists and the global reach here we have and the diversity of the panelists. So it's so great to see that. All right, well, let's get into our first question. Calvin, I'm going to put you on the spot here. We'll start with you. In one word, tell us a positive cybersecurity trend that impacted your business in 2022.
So in one word, that's hard to do, by the way. That's a tough question. But if it was one word, I'd say insurance.
Insurance.
And the reason why I'd say insurance is specifically we're seeing it more and more difficult for the small to medium enterprises to obtain that. And so they're wondering why. And as a result, they're looking for trusted advisors to be able to unpack that and understand that they need more controls. They need more solutions to be able to obtain that level of cyber insurance. And the reality being is that they're not able to actually get the coverage that they thought they could before. And so either they're being declined or their coverage is being drastically reduced, which means they have to take on more risks. The benefit to us is that we've been front and center already talking about these types of solutions. And so we're front of mind when they need that help. And so we're seeing a big uptake in a lot of our cybersecurity services in order to help better protect our clients.
I agree. That's definitely changed in the last year, at least on the receiving end of it. So absolutely. So thank you, Maria. Your word.
In one word, I would say XDR. I think because for us, we consider that is the easiest and better way to expand our MSP services, because we are constantly striving to provide customers with low cost and effective solutions. However, the task of monitoring potential breaches is getting more complicated due to the expanding attack surfaces or areas. So with XDR, we can have a platform with that intelligently brings together all the relevant security data and protect the different environments. So for us, XDR.
Nice, awesome, thank you. Jody, what about you?
Well, Calvin had my answer. My answer is the same, cyber insurance. And, for all the reasons that Calvin said, but just to give you a specific example, we had one customer who has about 1,000 users. In 2021, his cyber insurance policy was about 21,000. And in May of this year, he received 2 quotes. One was for 70,000 and the other was for 100,000. Just to give you some idea of just how big this issue really is. We improved their endpoint, added some EDR, and he ended up with a policy that cost around 27,000, but he dramatically improved his insurance, his cybersecurity posture. So it was really a win-win for him, to have better security. But the cyber insurance problem that businesses are facing is no small thing. And we also have helped companies fill out more cyber insurance forms than ever before. So that has been a really big impact on our business this year.
Awesome, outstanding. So, all right, cybersecurity or cyber insurance up 2-1. All right, Paul, what is your word?
Yeah, in our case, the key word is compliance. And I look at it both as internal compliance. We went through an ISO 27001 certification program. We're in our 2nd year of implementation. And also in Ecuador, a new law for the protection of personal data was passed, and the sanctions for it will begin in 2023. So that has raised the awareness of our customers in terms of protecting their networks and preventing events that could potentially imply loss of information with larger consequences now, not only for them internally, but also penalized by the new law. So in our case, compliance, both internal and external.
I can relate to that too. Within WatchGuard, we've grown our compliance team. It's just globally, it's a lot to stay up with. So we can definitely relate there as well. I will actually answer this one only because actually, Maria, you and I share the same view. I was actually going to say correlation, and it's because of what XDR brings, right? And what I think is just a real game changer, and really WatchGuard is launching that, is the correlation. So bringing in your information from your firewalls, your endpoints, identity, bringing that together and being able to see that in one spot would definitely be something we're excited about, and we think will provide a lot of value back. So I think the score is 2 points for cyber insurance, 2 points for XDR, and then we have a compliance word. So great, thanks. Maria, I'm going to move on to our next question. I'm going to start with you. Looking ahead at 2023, what are your biggest opportunities as a service provider, and how will these opportunities impact cybersecurity?
When I was thinking about this question, I know that this is something that we already are doing, but I think it's going to be bigger next year. So I would say MSSP, because I think now we are already starting in that direction, but there is still a long way to go. And we believe that we can grow most and add more value to our clients, because in Spain we have the 90% of businesses are small and medium-sized businesses who doesn't have the size and resources to hire their own IT department, but they really need cybersecurity solution. So MSP for them it's introducing, but we have to continue. So next year, I think that is MSSP. It's nothing new for the sector, but it's new for our customers in Spain.
All right, it's a lot of growing to go there. That's exciting to hear, and we can definitely see how that and what vendors WatchGuard could potentially help there. So that's great. Jody, same question.
And the same answer. That is exactly what we're seeing as well, in part due to just the trends, and it's not getting any better, it's getting worse, and customers are finally realizing that, along with cyber insurance, enforcing them to learn that they can't skimp on their security. And there's such a big talent shortage. We've actually picked up 3 different customers this calendar year just solely because their security person, or the person who was running it at the time, left, and they can't find anyone to replace them, or they've decided not to replace them because the job is just too big. Between all the things going on in IT, the cybersecurity part is just too much. It's just gotten too big. And for your second question, how will this impact cybersecurity? Well, I'd like to think it'll get better because when you have someone who's their focus, their education, their drive, their entire purpose of their company is to protect customer data, instead of making sure help desk is running and everyone can print, along with all the other jobs that go into IT, our focus is not the general IT part. It is more on cyber insurance, and it's also for us creating a network that runs securely. That is, we recently had a customer that had a breach, and their network, we had done a network redesign for them, just hadn't gotten to it yet, and it's going to make a big difference, I think, for customers to have both networks better designed and have their cybersecurity better implemented and watched, monitoring, logging, reporting. Is anybody looking at those things? And we have customers that have tools, and every time I talk to them, I was like, so how's that tool working? I don't know, I never look at it. Well, that's a good thing you spend money on it then. But we are hearing that a lot. And, so if they will turn that over to us, they actually will save some money, and they will be more secure. So that'll be a real positive for us going forward.
Great, thanks, Jody. Paul, how about you?
Yeah, we see 2 categories of opportunities mainly. One has to do with the remote workforce, and that's a lag effect from the pandemics, people needing a more secure environment to work at home. And that involves validating identities, that involves a secure Wi-Fi connection for users to roam around their homes. and simulate that security they have at the corporate office environment. So that's one. And the other opportunity we see important is consolidation in terms of having one security vendor for both the endpoint and the network pieces of it. So in that way, one relationship, one management console, and one learning curve for the IT support staff, both within the company and us as the external provider.
Oh, I definitely see that. Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. Calvin, how about you?
Yeah, I see a few different things. Number one is MSPs in general, and I think this is just more of an industry trend, is the pivot from a traditional MSP to an MSSP. And so really kind of diving deeper into cybersecurity services and upskilling the current workforce that these companies have to be able to offer intelligent cybersecurity services, along with partnering with vendors out in that space. I think the bigger challenge that we're starting to see, though, is with that movement to the cloud and M365. We moved into this model where we have discretionary access control. Things like SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams have enabled the mobile workforce to be able to collaborate in many new ways. And I think the challenge or opportunity, I would say, is around data governance and the ability to actually understand where the data sits in an organization, who's it being shared with, where, maybe the sensitivity of that data. And there's laws and rules that are coming out and or already exist, like GDPR, that we need to really ensure that the customers understand where their data sits, and so that they can react. And so we're seeing that as a big movement. And then, of course, on boards. And what I mean by that is that if any business has a governing board, cybersecurity is becoming a hot topic because the boards are being held accountable. And so what we're seeing is the ability to lean into the CISO services that we can provide insights and threat intelligence to boards, and then help craft a cybersecurity journey for these customers so that they're able to start at a baseline and then grow over time. I always say cybersecurity is not a destination, it's a journey, and simply because it's always evolving and it's very dynamic in itself. So those are the categories I absolutely see as front and center for 2023.
That's great. Yeah, I agree. Definitely a journey. So what I'm hearing in a lot of the answers for this one is a lot of MSSP growth and consolidating the vendor, but certainly a lot around compliance and governance here as well. So kind of moving to our next area and talking more about a vendor. Jody, I'm going to start with you. What are the top level factors important to you when assessing a potential new vendor, or when figuring out if a current vendor is working well for you?
Well, this was my favorite question of your questions because it was like the easiest. First question, or first thing we take a look at is, do our customers need it? And are they buying it somewhere else? Is it something that solves a problem for our customers overall? Or is it, how much skin do they have in the game in terms of how long have they been in business? Are they brand new? Which is not always bad, but so really that question is more, are our customers going to want it? The next question from my perspective is, are engineers excited about it? I mean, I'm usually the first one on the vendor call. I'm not the technical person, I'm the business end. So I can have a great conversation with them about margins and all that kind of thing and deal registration and all that stuff. But if my engineers hate it, or if it's hard for them to implement, it really doesn't matter how inexpensive I can buy it. It's not going to, we're going to waste a lot of time from an engineer perspective. So we don't, it has to go to the engineer level, and they have to be really excited about it. Our next question is it sustainable and is it scalable? Can we use it for, we have customers that range all the way from 50 users to about 1,500 users, and that's really a fairly broad range for for a customer base, and some have no IT staff, some do have IT staff. So if it's the customers that don't have IT staff and we're doing the maintaining of the product, how sustainable is that for us? And that gets back to that question of engineers, how excited are they about it, and how easy is it for them to implement? And then, the thing I look at, of course, is can we make money at it? Are the margins good? How relational is the company? How much involvement do they have with their partners? And because that plays directly into how much money can they make on it. If I'm working with a partner that is, just 100%, this is your price no matter what, and your entry level, so you get to make, $100. Like, not really excited about that. But if it's, a relational company, that goes better. And the other question there is, figuring out if it is working well for you. That was a really great question, because there certainly have been vendors that we have dropped. And when I stopped and thought about that, why did we drop them? It was usually because their tech support was either really slow to respond, or we couldn't get what we needed technically, or from a business perspective end, I couldn't get what I needed in terms of a demo or even pricing. I mean, I literally have a pricing request out right now that has been out there for almost a month. How long do you think that vendor is going to be a partner of Sage? It's just not, that's just not, and it's all because they got swallowed by a bigger company, which got swallowed by a bigger company. Also, the other thing I would say is very important to me is how much churn goes on inside the company. There's vendors I work with that, like, every 6 months or so, I'll get a new email saying, "Oh, I'm your new rep." I'm like, really? Because I don't remember the name of the last one. And and that is one thing I will say about WatchGuard, is the stability of who I'm working with is quite unusual compared to a lot of other vendors that we work with. We do sell a lot of WatchGuard, and that is part of the reason, but those things matter a lot. If I know who to call, who to talk to, where I get what I need, so I'm not spending a lot of time kind of scrambling through emails saying, let's see, what was the name of that person that sent me the email last month saying they were my new rep? Those kinds of things are just really pretty painful. So yeah, that's how we evaluate who we're working with.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jody. I can definitely relate on with the vendors, right? So I'm responsible for IT within WatchGuard, so I purchase a lot of things, and I agree with you. When reps change frequently, and hard to stay up on, especially when something happens and you need to get a hold of someone immediately. Our world moves fast, right? And we can't wait for delays. So I can definitely relate and definitely see that. So yeah, all right. Well, thanks for that. Appreciate that. Paul, same question to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a little bit in line with Jody's answer. Our factors go from technical to the business side of it. And the first technical factor we look at is performance. All of our portfolio of business continuity services is mission critical. So we cannot afford something that's not dependable, trustable, and that requires the minimum intervention from our side over time. On the software side, we need options and features that can be configured without additional cost. That's an important factor as well. Scalability, oftentimes we have customers that grow, 20 to 50, 50 to 80 users, and the fact that we can switch the hardware with no impact on their operations or on their configurations is also something that we like. And with WatchGuard, we love that. We offline backup of the configuration, and it's just unplug and plug, and you keep going. So I've even liked to do it myself sometimes, and it's so easy that even our non-technical people can do it. Next comes support. Quick support and easy escalation from the manufacturer that gives us deeper knowledge than what we can handle. So we only escalate what we need to, but when we do, we expect quick and and high quality support. And finally, value. If you might have something that works really well, you need to have a competitive price, and you need to add value. In this case, this value is through good cybersecurity performance to the end customer. Dependability first, and then value at the end.
Nice. Yeah, definitely can see how WatchGuard can help you on that. Yeah, I agree on the value. Great sticking points. Calvin, your thoughts?
Yeah, so, I think some of the panelists already made mention, its features, its scalability, it's the operationalization of that, and how much, people capital do you have to deploy to support said solution. The support that's been mentioned, I'm always interested in the product roadmap. Where's it going? Often we find that there's typically like you want something else in the product, and so understanding maybe where that sits in the product roadmap journey. Of course, price at the end. But when we select a vendor, so we've gone through all of that stuff, and we've come down to, okay, we're going to proceed with evaluation. And we take a very standardized approach to this. Number one, we do a vendor risk management. So we go through and understand, depending on, the criticality of this vendor into our products and services, where do they stand? And how mature is their own internal cybersecurity practices to ensure that the product and, this becoming part of maybe the supply chain within our customers and F12, how good are they? And so evaluating them from that perspective. Of course, we go through a testing criteria where we do a proof of value. And that proof of value is pretty long. I don't think vendors like us for this, because we usually take 60 to 90 days to evaluate a product. Simply because what we don't do is we don't go and say, hey, this is one product. I'm looking to see if can we take this out to the entire market that we serve. And so I'm always looking at it from is this going to be a point solution, or is this going to be something I can adopt within our platform and provide to all our clients as a result? And so the last step of this, especially around cybersecurity vendors, is we actually do a third-party red team exercise. And we do this annually. We test our entire stack, top to bottom, but we also test any net new vendor that we bring aboard. So, we do this constantly, but we lean into some great third-party cybersecurity specialists that just hack the product and determine where it's weak, or if it's supposed to detect said attack, is it able to live up to it? And I want to tell a story, if I could just have a few minutes.
Yeah.
We went back a couple years ago, and we were evaluating the next EDR solution, and I would say seduced would be the word I would use. Seduced by the fact that Gartner's Magic Quadrant #1, and I was like, oh, this must be the right company to go after. It starts with S, ends with 1, but let me just say that we went through an extensive evaluation criteria, because it was going to go across the entire gamut of our customer base. And so, we did POCs, we did mock tendencies, operationalizing, deployment, et cetera, and we got to the end of it where we did the red team exercise, and it failed. And I was shocked, because #1 would mean that the functionality, the features, the protections you'd be getting out of that product should be #1. They should stop the attack. And that gave me pause. And then we went out and we said, okay, well, did we configure it right? Like, what did we do wrong ultimately? And we had their engineering team give it the up and down, made sure that everything was set as correctly as it should be. And but I obviously wanted to go to market and understand what else was there. And this actually happened to be when WatchGuard acquired Panda. And so we brought in EPDR as a secondary, went through the same evaluation criteria, and we pitted that company against EPDR in the zero trust model, and they failed again. Second time. Same test. They had the test plan at this point, so like they should have just passed. It would have been my thing, but they didn't. EPDR through WatchGuard and through the Panda acquisition passed with flying colors. In fact, many of the things wouldn't even actually execute because of the zero trust model. And so that functionally made the decision for us to continually to evaluate our vendors. And we do this on, like I said, on an annual basis to ensure that the stack is measuring up. It's another reason why we changed our MDR provider. They simply weren't able to detect the attacks. And so we scrutinize it. And I think this is an important aspect in selecting any cybersecurity vendor is do your due diligence. Take that due care when you're selecting them and invest in actually evaluating whether or not they're actually living up to their full potential. And it's certainly something that we think about all the time, and we're proud that we can stand behind the products because we do that kind of thorough testing.
Nice, a great story, and even better advice to others. Yeah, I can definitely. I know those companies, and I guess if I have ability to somehow change something in our industry, I'd be less worried about where certain companies land. I'll just say it that way. We'll stay away from using any other evaluators' names, but someone actually independently testing the efficacy of solutions. It's great to hear you saying that and doing that for your company. I as someone who purchases a lot of equipment, I do want to ensure things are being stopped. So no, that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Maria, why don't you bring us home with this question?
Thank you. Well, I'm in line with all the panelists, so I'm going to repeat a bit, but well, because we all think the same. But the first thing I would say is trust in the brand, as you have already said, to know about their strategy, how they understand and implement cybersecurity, its reputation, strength of the brand. And the second, trust in the technology. That's there is when our IT department get involved and our technician need to evaluate the product and determine if it meets expectation, if the technology is in line with what we are looking for, something that we can embrace and work with. And the third one, we trust in the channel. There is a lot of vendor outside, and not all of them always respect the channel. So at Microcad, we want to work with vendor who trust and value our work. From our point of view, their focus should be help and grow our business and establish together a win-win relationship. So for us, it's also important that they take care of us and the partner and.
Nice. All right. Well, great, Maria. Thank you for sharing that. So took a few notes during this question, specifically, and a couple of themes that most of you mentioned. I heard a lot around scalability of the product being very important. And Jody, in fact, gave specific numbers about your end users. So having products that can scale that is definitely something that each of you shared. And then, around where is the product going? I'll say I get frontline seat every quarter of our roadmap and to see our annual plan and where we're going with our products. It's one of the more exciting internally meetings I get to join and be a part of, just to see where the industry is going and where WatchGuard's going. So I can assure you that those roadmapping sessions go a long ways, and it's constantly being discussed here at WatchGuard. So. And then also just sort of around performance, dependability, sustainability of the product itself, and kind of covering around the risk management are some of the themes that you're wanting out of vendors, right? And wanting them, and then consolidation, right? And really just having it all in one place. I can definitely see, while I don't work for an MSSP, just having, I can see where if you were just going to one spot, it would just save a lot of time and a lot of, makes you a lot more efficient. So great answers there, great discussion, love the story. For our final question, I'm going to start with Paul. Paul, can you talk to us about when WatchGuard ensured a win for your business?
Yes. So just this year, we had a similar experience to what was said before regarding endpoint. And when WatchGuard's EPDR was measured against one of the big brands, it actually performed better. And that allowed us to penetrate an account that has over 100 users with potential to grow. So that was one case that I can actually confirm, similar to what Calvin said in his experience. And another important one for us was the ability to add high availability without impacting the customer operations. And this happened with a sporting club in Ecuador. Is a well-known customer. It's a large customer, and they wanted to add redundancy to their operations. They were going through quality certification, and they needed to show that their mission-critical systems, including cybersecurity, of course, as one of the most important ones today, was redundant and had a scheme of high availability for failover. And they had a short deadline for that implementation. And we happen to have same model in stock, and enabling the high availability was done quickly according to customer expectations without any impact at their operation, and without having to configure anything new. So it was basically just a cross connect, and off we went, meeting the customer expectations, both in terms of redundancy, quality, and implementation time, without the impact that they wanted to avoid at all costs. So I can mention those two, both on the endpoint side of protection and on the network side of protection, adding redundancy, which was very important for this project.
Nice. That's great. I'm also hearing simple in there, right? Easy to deploy, easy to install. That makes a difference too. So that's great. Thank you.
Time saving as well.
Yep, definitely. Calvin, how about you?
Yeah, so this one's a little different from a perspective, is that we standardize on WatchGuard with firewalls, with endpoint, and with MFA. And so, like, we're so standardized in that, like, it's made mandatory. Like, you cannot be a customer without these elements in play. And so the benefit that we get as an organization is, through that standardization, we get operational maturity and efficiency. And so what I mean by that is, we don't have to train our staff on multiple solutions. We can train them on one solution and have them become subject matter experts on that solution. Everything from deployability to supportability. And so there's just a higher institutional knowledge base that we have within our team as a result. And so that continues to perform very well for us. The other thing that I would say that we've seen as of late is just the enhancements to the product, and the focus to add additional features, whether that's quality of life, whether that's new functionality that is helping our clients be able to conduct business. And so those things rolling out as the product stack evolves is very beneficial, because they're seeing continued value with us selecting WatchGuard as a partner. So those would be the wins. Thank you.
Got it. Continued value, always good. I appreciate that. Thanks. Maria, how about you?
Well, partnering with a vendor like WatchGuard give us a focus. We can concentrate on its product, master it, and sell it successfully. So your IT department really invests time to learn, to know in depth about the product, and this lead on and best customer experience, because we know better the product, commercial, and in the IT and commercial department. Also, I think it's a product that fits in the Spanish market, because it is a solution within the top 5, but it gives the best value for money. So in Spain, companies are very sensitive to price. Therefore, they value having good technology at a good price. So it's a good mix.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone globally is feeling inflation, and certainly economically, there's some challenging times ahead. So working with a vendor that provides a lot of value, you can definitely relate to that. So that's great. Next, Jody, can you take us home with your response to this one?
Sure. There's actually a lot of times WatchGuard has helped ensure a win for me. I mean, we've been working with WatchGuard now for 14 years, and there's a couple that have come to mind. One was actually a long time ago. I want to say 10, 12 years ago, even with a city government, about 1,000 users. We went head to head with, I believe it was Fortinet, Palo Alto, and WatchGuard. And of those three, WatchGuard was the least known. And this was in the Palo Alto up and coming everybody wants it days, because they're all looking at Gartner and you know, WatchGuard just bent over backwards in terms of getting information, doing demos, providing metrics, letting them do a proof of concept, all that. And at the end of the day, they chose WatchGuard and they chose Sage. They've been a customer of ours now ever since. It was a heated battle, but even, you know, every few years, you know, their city government, they have to, well, every company should do this, but city governments fall under more rules. And so they reevaluate and they come to us and ask, you know, is WatchGuard still the best? Should we stay with it? Because every single conference we go to for city governments, everyone's got Palo Alto. And in fact, one year they asked me to quote them Palo Alto, and the price was like $250,000, and the WatchGuard price was, I want to say I don't remember exactly, somewhere between 50 and 70,000. And I was like, why don't you just tell all those, you know, colleagues at these city government conferences that they're using the wrong firewall, they're spending city money the wrong way. And they, you know, they just upgraded this calendar year, and you know, they've been with WatchGuard ever since. They've never had any reason to change that, and WatchGuard has continued to innovate and you know, give them what they need, give me what I need. I've had 2 customers in the last year, these guys being one of them, that wanted 5-year pricing. Well, WatchGuard doesn't technically have 5-year pricing, but you know, they just put it together and gave it to me, and gave it to the end user, and, you know, heavily discounted. I made a lot of money. Those customers spent a lot less money. They still have the performance and the security that they need. And, you know, so really WatchGuard ensuring a win is it's kind of like they don't give you any reason to switch away from it. You know, it's and that has proven true for us, you know, throughout the 14 years. I mean, there have been some ups and downs for sure, but, you know, overall, WatchGuard has not given our customers a reason to leave their platform. So, or, you know, we don't get people calling us saying we've got to switch away from this. And we do get that with other vendors. So it is out there, but it's not happening because we do support a lot of different platforms, a lot of different, you know, firewalls and endpoint and, you know, whatever it is that they have. So I think they ensure a win by not giving our customers a reason to move away from it.
Well, I can assure you, just being part of the executive team here at WatchGuard, listening to our customers is big, and we do a lot around products and even in our back office to try to provide that flexibility. So Jody, you know, hearing the story about the 5 years, those are things that we try to go above and beyond for our customers to try to support that. So it's glad to actually hear a live example of that. And you know, and also I hear longevity in your answer too. Well, you know, WatchGuard's been doing this for a while, and so we've certainly learned a lot through the years. And just kind of overall for everyone bringing this home, you know, we talked about high availability and protection, but really standardization as well. But just the overall value that WatchGuard brings, sounds like all of you are appreciating that and seeing that as really what it helps a big win for your business. And I can actually share with you, I can tell you my big win for WatchGuard is for the first time in my career, I actually get my products for free. So I get everything from WatchGuard and we deploy everything. So, and I don't have to pay anything. So that's tremendous value for me. Although our financial people still hold me accountable to a stricter budget though. But well, that's great. Well, we got a couple of follow-on questions, and I actually had something I wanted to ensure we got through our initial questions, but I want to actually go back to something, Calvin, that you talked about around risk assessment. Can you talk to us about what does that entail, and what are some recommendations that you may have, and for any other panelists too that wants to make comments on it. But can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so we have a effectively 40 questions that we go through, and of course, like most businesses, we work with multiple vendors and in different contexts, and so what we actually had to lean into is, because before we just had a questionnaire and we just do this, and it would be a yearly kind of endeavor to evaluate our vendors and see where they were sitting or ask for additional information. And we had to actually move to a platform. Like, we simply couldn't manage it. And just from an assessment standpoint, and then the evaluation every year. And so we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified, so it is a requirement of one of our controls that we are doing vendor assessments. And so we leaned into a product called Tugboat. There's another product called OneTrust that do these types of activities and help with automating it. So that's one aspect. The other component is that we ask just more questions, right? So a lot of companies will have a trust center, and they'll have maybe their certification that they have obtained. Don't look at that as face value. Actually read it, or have somebody actually read it and understand what it says, because often a business's controls are actually listed in there. And just because they have a certification, that's the company's control. That control might not be sufficient. And so it's actually looking at what that control is doing, and is it actually mitigating the risk? They may still be able to get the certification, but the reality is that everything kind of goes back to what it starts with, and that's policy. It's, do they have a policy on data governance, data management, an incident response plan, a cybersecurity breach plan? And all that does is it tells you the maturity of the organization, because some can fake it till they make it, but others, when they are a critical vendor in your supply chain to your clients, then there has to be a higher scrutiny. And it's just that methodology and commitment to doing it. I know it's an administrative burden. I know, because I have to do it with my team. But the result is that it really uncovers the maturity of some of these vendors, and then you can ask maybe far more pointed questions and drive them to maybe a better result, so that they're more capable, stable, and better protected as a result, which then hopefully they're not part of the weakest link in the supply chain. And this is just, I think, an evolution in the business, in our industry, is that more and more of this is coming out as a requirement, that we have to hold ourselves and each other to higher standards. And so that's what we do. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, thanks for expanding on that. I didn't know if anybody else had anything around risk assessment to add. We do have other questions though around, a question coming in around, we're hearing a lot about consolidating vendors or just using one vendor for cybersecurity. Anybody comments on what you think about that? What would you recommend?
Well, let me just add a little bit on the consolidation piece. The fact that we can consolidate network with endpoint is a big plus, but also the fact that we have one reporting tool to communicate with the customer. So dimensions, templates have helped us issue permanent and recurring reports to the customers. And that historical data or knowledge has allowed us to even go back in time and take a look at previous trends or threats that the customer has been facing over time, and it helped us adjust the policies or the conditions or the internal network segmentation or VLANs within the companies that have helped prevent that from occurring again. So it's not only dealing with one provider, it's dealing with one tool that keeps the same format over time, and that helps going back and getting the knowledge from the trends that help you prevent recurrences in the future.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, maybe, I really like the fact that when there's an ecosystem, It was made mention of XDR, Maria. I think Wayson, you made mention of correlation. So the fact that WatchGuard is working towards threat sync and providing more enrichment of threat intelligence across the platform through the different capabilities, whether that's off point, endpoint, or the perimeter through the firewall, and correlating that up to WatchGuard Cloud, I think is really, really, really good, because it's providing you that intelligence that you can react to or on or proactively, hopefully. Now, that being said, I'm against a one vendor ecosystem, just simply because, just to be frank, one threat intelligence feed is only as good as it. And
Sure.
so having multiple threat intelligent feeds is very important. And then the aggregation of that across a platform is also equally important. And so, I wouldn't want, say, a vendor that would be maybe doing all that correlation and then be the same ones that watch it. I would want that to be separated. And that's only simply because I want to diversify my risk. Because with one vendor, you're only as good as that one vendor. But with multiple, you might have some overlap, and that overlap should provide a more wholesome protection across the client base. And so that would be my only topic about that. I think there's many schools of thought on this, but
Sure.
it's the one I would lean towards.
Got it. Yeah, no, sure. That definitely. Anyone else?
We use more of a multi-vendor approach as well for really the same reasons. But it depends a lot on where the customer is at. What do they have in place currently? Where are they headed? Are they looking to have us manage everything? Or do they care what they have on their network? If they're managing things, then how does that fit in to what we would recommend? We find ourselves tailoring what we recommend based a lot on what they have already and where they're at. What is their management team size? What's their budget? When it comes to budget, WatchGuard is always a great conversation, and because we can fit WatchGuard into budgets really pretty well, especially things like the HA unit on a firewall. If you ask me, that's the biggest no-brainer out there with WatchGuard. Their pricing on that is just unbelievable, and I can compete on that one every day of the week. But for us, it just really depends on where they are, who's managing it, and where they're going. And if they're having to downsize their IT staff and outsource some of it, or if they've lost IT staff and can't find talent, then our recommendation will play a lot more heavily into where they want to go with their technology, compared to if they already have it, they're already managing it, and they love it. Then we'll fit more into their technology. We're not a straight MSP or MSSP. We work with customers that have us manage their platforms, and we work with customers who don't, they manage things, and there's the ones that we manage. So there's a lot of factors that play into that.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah, I agree with Jody. Depends on the client needs. Sometimes if you have like small and medium-sized enterprise who normally prefer MSP services, it's easier maybe to have one vendor, and you can manage all the solution that the customer needs with the vendor. But sometimes if you have other clients with different needs, maybe you have to do a mix between different vendors to have like all the product and solution that the customer needs. Depends always on the client and the technology need.
Oh, thanks. Looks like we might be able to get one more question. Sorry, there's a few others out there that we might not be able to get to. I'm just going to read them as they come in. So I think this will be our last question. So for anyone, do you use a third-party reviews or referrals to evaluate a new vendor? We touched on it a little, but I think with Kelvin touched on it a little, but maybe others, or even Kelvin, if you want to kind of expand on that. Do you recommend a particular source?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, the questions are around like the business processes and the policies. We do a third party like digital footprint review as well. And so we use a couple different products that exist out in the market, like Security Scorecard or Black Kite. just to name a couple that that actually look at it from an outside perspective to say, hey, this is what an attack or a threat actor would see, and then they can map, and then based on maybe it's vulnerabilities and the digital footprint of the weaknesses that might exist in that vendor, and if they fall below a certain threshold, you should have questions about that, and what their cadence would be around some of these elements that you would see, because you can only take what a vendor says at face value, and so how do you ensure that they're doing that? And I'm not saying you have to do that with every vendor, but your key vendors that you work with, what are you doing to ensure that if you have a crown jewel within your organization, probably your RMM or your PSA, you should probably make sure that you put in some additional factors into that. Part of that is the vendor risk profile and a risk management interface to understand how are they interacting and what are you doing. Because if you're on, just an example, if you're on an RMM that's probably 3 patch cycles behind, that's probably risk. Or your PSA, if it's 3 cycles behind, you're at risk. And so, I encourage, MSPs, MSSPs that are really thinking this through to say, also look at yourselves. Just because the vendor might be at risk, making sure that you're constantly patching or leaning into that cloud vendor is so important to just protecting the supply chain. And I think that's just a critical aspect that we all have to do better at. And I say that as an industry because I see it where we see our colleagues being breached because of these types of things. So,
yeah. All right. Well, I tell you what, we're just about there, and so first, just to kind of wrap this up, anyone with a Q&A, someone from marketing will follow up with you, so you should see an answer to your question very soon. Jody, Maria, Calvin, Paul, I want to thank you very much for giving us your time today and your valuable insight into what you do and introducing yourselves and your company. It was a great discussion today. And on behalf of WatchGuard Technologies, we want to thank everyone for giving us time to view this webinar. If you have additional information, you can certainly get through us, respond to the marketing team, and we'll get some information out to you. And I just want to thank everybody again for joining Critical Factors to Look For in a Cybersecurity Vendor. I hope everyone has a great day, great evening, and take care.